This podcast is part of the Power of Podcasting Network. Find it at powerofpodcasting.com.
Today on episode number 658, in honor of Valentine's Day, we're talking with some people because of my podcast. They found love, and because of an article, I was wrong. Yep, we'll talk about that. And I've got some free SEO tools that you might want to check in because there are other things besides Apple to help you get found. Hit it, ladies.
The School of Podcasting with Dave Jackson.
Podcasting since 2005. I am your award-winning Hall of Fame podcast consultant, Dave Jackson. Thanking you so much for tuning in. This is where I help you massage your message. I help you tackle the technology. I help you face your fears and flatten the learning curve and get you on the road to podcasting in the right direction. I help you sound like $1 million without spending $1 million. My website is schoolofpodcasting.com. Use the coupon code LISTENER, that's LISTENER, and you can buy either a monthly subscription, a yearly subscription, or you can buy the courses a la carte, or you can sign up for the 3-month podcast quick start mentoring program. It's all out there, schoolofpodcasting.com/start. And speaking of a 1-year subscription, how'd you like to win a 1-year subscription to the School of Podcasting along with $159,000 others worth of, it's a whole lot of moolah, $150,000 worth of podcast equipment? Go out to myroadcast.com. They have the new pod mic from Rode, the Rodecaster Pro. You've got a year from little old me and a whole bunch of other stuff from headphones to mic stands to Adobe stuff, lavalier microphones. Holy cow, myroadcast.com. And as I look at the calendar, it is February 17th, which means this week was Valentine's Day. And I asked a few people that I knew of, I said, hey, would you like to share your story? Why? That's right. They found love via podcasting. Here we go. Let's get our Valentine's Day on. First up, we got John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. And John, is the official title Special Lady?
Yes. Well, it's Samantha from the I Shake My Head with Lisa and Sam podcast. And it was funny because how we met, I was in a podcasting Facebook group, and I'm a bit of an audio snob, as anyone who knows me can tell. And there was a woman in there, and she said, hey, we podcast out of our car. And I was like, oh, I got to go listen to this. And I went to listen, and they did podcast out of their car with their phone. But to be honest with you, the content was so good and they were so funny. I thought it was pretty good. And you know what I didn't do? I made the cardinal error. I didn't subscribe. So I couldn't remember about the show. And then somewhere about a month later, they were in a podcasting group again. I said, oh, there's that show. Let me subscribe. And through that, I started to know the one girl, Samantha, she was very, very funny. And then she said something like she was never married and doesn't have any kids. And I was like, I have to check this out. So doing so, I couldn't find any pictures of her. So then what I did was I started helping them with their podcast, with sound quality and stuff like that, to get to know them. And then one thing led to another. And actually, it'll be 9 months that we've been dating. Now, it's a long distance relationship. Don't get me wrong. It's 2,100 miles away. But through, video chat and talking and stuff, and we go back and forth to each other's place, it's been great. And it's all because of podcasting.
That's right. There we go. Getting our Valentine's Day on. Next up, we have Chris from I Am Salt Lake. I will be in Utah in June at the Utah Podcast Summit. Let's hand it over to Chris and keep getting our Valentine's Day on.
Christina and I, we're just going to kind of try to share a little bit of our story of how we met through podcasting. If it wasn't for I Am Salt Lake podcast, we wouldn't have been on each other's radars. And to be honest with you, I doubt our paths would have ever crossed.
I don't think so, because to be honest, we don't have a lot of other things in common except for podcasting.
You don't think?
Well, I think podcasting is definitely our biggest thing that we have in common that brought us together.
So Christina used to do stand-up comedy here in Salt Lake City. I was doing a lot of podcast interviews with stand-up comedians. And so I was like, gosh, I want to bring this girl on.
I was watching all my friends get famous.
But I have a crush on this girl. And so what do? I just kept delaying it.
Yeah.
Even though we were connected on Facebook and we were connected through different outlets.
We definitely knew of each other. And I was doing my own podcast, but I didn't have I didn't know the podcast community existed. So Chris was one of the only few podcasters that I was really aware of. And I had my eye on to kind of see what he was doing and how he was doing it and trying to learn long distance.
And weren't you sharing episodes of the podcast as kind of a way to flirt with me?
Yes. I thought I was too shy to say hi or like send you a message. So I thought maybe if I share some of his episodes, he'll notice me.
Hey, eventually it was Tinder though that threw us together. And that's what I like about Tinder. I'm like, okay, this girl's single. She's ready to mingle. Why not ask her out on a date? Right?
Yeah. And I was like, that's what I downloaded Tinder to see specifically if you were on it. And I'm like, if I swipe right and it matches, we're good to go.
Okay, note to self, install Tinder. Okay, let's get back to the Holyfields.
And let's see here. So then we start dating. You're doing another podcast. I'm doing a podcast, which was like, oh my gosh, I'm diving onto heaven. Oh, one thing I didn't mention that really was the tipping point of being like, this girl is awesome, like a selling point, like, hello. The first time I got into your vehicle, you're listening to talk radio.
Because I'm a huge talk radio nerd.
Yeah. So
it was awesome. And like the best part is because we were both trying to date before with other people who weren't podcasters. And I know for me, it was really frustrating because they didn't understand why we had to always go record and go edit and, and when you and I got together, we could sit on your couch and edit podcasts together. And it was just amazing.
And talk podcasting design.
You taught me how to actually edit episodes.
So in a nutshell, the secret is if you're a podcaster, find somebody else that loves podcasts or to podcast and then eventually bring them on as a co-host to your podcast, right?
And then maybe they'll give you a baby. It worked out for me.
Exactly. So anyway, IamSaltLake.com is our website for I Am Salt Lake podcast. Christina, Chris, thank you so much, Dave. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Maybe you'll find your next love at the next podcast meetup or podcast convention, right?
Just keep putting yourself out there.
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop with the creepy voice. Next up, I met these two in DC Podfest, Jeremy and Dina Marie. And I'll be talking about Jeremy here in just a second.
Hi, Dave. This is Jeremy Collins from the podcast We Listen To podcast and Facebook group.
And this is Dina Marie, host of the Twisted Philly podcast.
We heard that you were looking for stories about people who had met each other through podcasting for your Valentine's Day show.
And we definitely fit that description. Should we tell people how we first got connected?
Sure. I host a show where I interview other podcast hosts about their show. And a mutual friend, Nina Instead of the Already Gone podcast, suggested that I should interview Dina Marie about her show, Twisted Philly.
You reached out to me and I already knew you a little bit. I was in the Facebook group and you reached out and said, hey, I'm Jeremy. Nina suggested I interview you for my show. I'm going to listen to your show and then we'll get you on the roster in the not too distant future.
Right.
And then I started getting DMs occasionally that would say, hey, you're into this. I'm into that too. And at first it seemed a little creepy, but then I realized, oh, wait, he's listening to my podcast. That's how he knows all these things about me.
Yeah. On her show, she talks about all the things that she's into, as well as everything that's going on around Philadelphia. Hearing that she's into Star Wars and she's into the Lord of the Rings and she's into all of these things that I'm also into, and hearing her personality on the show, I started catching some feels.
You were in your feelings.
You might say that I had a bit of a crush.
Then I went on Jeremy's show. We talked for a good while before the interview and we talked for a little while after the interview. I think we both felt, is there something here? Maybe, maybe not. I'd been on my own for 14 years, had some relationships. I was not in any way, shape, or form looking for any sort of a connection with anyone.
I definitely wasn't, because I had split up from my ex just a few months before that.
Then we both happened to go to a convention. We just knew. Once we were face to face, we knew whatever it was that each of us had been sensing as we would talk on the phone and over Skype, that there was something real.
Well, I mean, it took a while to figure that out. At least a good 30 seconds.
And then Jeremy came on my show. I started getting all these messages from listeners telling us, ooh, there's all kinds of chemistry going on between the two of you. You need to go out.
Kind of as a joke, I did ask her out on her Facebook group when I saw those comments. Long story short, cut to a year and a half later, here I am living in Philadelphia with the love of my life, Dina Marie. The only reason that we met is because her daughter talked her into starting a podcast, and I wanted to interview her.
And I'm so glad you did.
This has changed our lives, and as corny and cheesy and cliche as it is, I couldn't live without this woman. I don't know how I would be the same person.
Well, lucky for you, you don't have to. We're really cheesy.
We could pour the Velveeta all over your show if you need the cheese.
That's the story of how we met, how we became friends, how we fell in love, how we got engaged, and how we're actually going to get married.
Because of podcasting.
So there you go. A special version of Because of My Podcast. You know, we always talk about you can be seen as a leader. You might get some money. You might get advertisers. You might get a job. You might get into places. You might get to talk to people you have no business talking to. And today we can add, and you might get laid. So, yay, podcasting.
In case you missed it, it's time for a podcast rewind.
I was on the Podcast We Listen To podcast. This is actually a Facebook group with a boatload of people in it, and over 20,000 from what I see here. And Jeremy's in there, and they actually talk about, podcasts we listen to, but one of those podcasts is not your own. It's not a place to go in and go, come listen to my show, please. Please listen to my show, please. But it's also a podcast, and I got to be interviewed by Jeremy, who was such a nice dude. I got to meet him and Dina in Washington at DC Podfest. Super nice peeps. And he's a guy that I think the interview was, I don't know, a half hour, and we must have talked for about 3. He's a super nice guy, super funny guy. And here's a clip of me telling stories about back in the day. I remember once I had a guy contact me. It was right when George W. Bush had taken over for Obama, I think it was, or it might have been vice versa. But anyway, the economy went in the tank. So everybody was getting laid off. And I had this guy contact me. He's like, hey, I just lost my job. I need to start a podcast, and I got to make a living in about 6 weeks. And I'm like, not going to happen. You know, it's even with something like Patreon, which is great, but that is a crowdfunding platform. And the first part of that word is crowd. And when you have no crowd, there's no funds. And now it's time for, hey, I was wrong.
Uh-oh. What?
I put out a article on the Podcast Business Journal. I'm a writer for that particular publication. And there's actually a extended dance version of that article coming out on my website. I did a video on YouTube, and it's about Anchor.fm. And if you're a regular listener to the show, you're probably going, he's going to talk about how Anchor sucks. No, I'm not, but I'm going to say this. Again, you can read my article. You can watch the YouTube video. I go into it. But one of the things I said is that MP3 is a more reliable format when people click play. And my buddy, my friend, James Cridlin from Pod News politely said, nah. And that's not exactly what he said, but he was like, can you please point at a player that's not going to play an M4A? And I said, well, I'm pretty sure. So I fired up iTunes, the actual desktop software, found my podcast from Anchor that I'm playing with, and hit play, and expected to watch the little circle just go round and 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 round like it always does. And instead it played. And I went, oh, oops. So, but I will say this, there is another reason why when I upload an MP3 file, I want an MP3 file to come down. And that's because, and I see this from my chair now, if you're new to the show, I work for Libsyn. That's Libsyn, stands for Liberated Syndication. Get a free month using the coupon code SOPFREE. And this is why most people go, oh, that's why he's not a fan of Anchor. No, if I didn't work for Libsyn, I would still say, eh. And that's what that article pointed out. There's like 6 different companies that have had free hosting that have gone out of business. But here's the thing, and this I see from my chair still to this day. Somebody will come to Libsyn, hey, I'm leaving, I'm going to Anchor. You can take your $15 a month and stick it up your butt. And so they leave, we put in the redirect. Actually, they put in the redirect, and off they go. 2 months later, they say, hey, how do I get my show back? And what happens is when they take their MP3 files that are on Libsyn, import them into Anchor, Anchor converts them all to M4A files, which by themselves, okay, apparently play everywhere. But after they go over there for, say, 2 months, if that, and they go, wow, the stats over here are horrible, and I'm only making, if I'm lucky, a penny a download, so I made $1.70 last week on these awesome ads. How do I come back to Libsyn? Because I really miss the stats. I really miss the support. I noticed on the tickets that I put into Anchor that the one took 4 days to get an answer from. And I can't import their stuff from Anchor back into Libsyn. Now, if they kept them in their original file name and the original format, we could import them over. Now, to give Anchor a break, if you're inserting ads into the MP3 file, you're not going to keep the file format, and you're definitely not going to keep the file name. So I kind of give them a pass, but that is something where, let's say you move to Blueberry and you move your files over there, same file name, same file format. And then later, if you want to come back to Libsyn or vice versa, maybe you're going from Libsyn to Blueberry. Nope, file name's the same, everything's the same, and consequently, you don't create duplicates. So that's another reason why I hate the fact that they changed their file name. But that is one, and the file format, but that is one I'm going to have to get over because almost no media host now keeps your file name. They don't keep your file format, but they definitely don't keep your file name because more and more people are doing dynamic ads so you can make 0.002 cents per download. But I do stand corrected. Thank you, Mr. Cridlin. Find him over at podnews.net.
Good day, sir.
A lot of people are freaking out over how poor search is in many apps, mainly Apple. And this kind of reminds me a little bit of when I went to college the first time. I decided to take some night classes. This gave me more hours during the day. I was a waiter, so I got more hours during the day, so I was making more money, but I had never taken night classes before, and these were really long classes. I remember it was a math class, and the teacher was just going through chapter after chapter. And at the end of a chapter, he'd be like, any questions? And then he would laugh because we were all just sitting there going, huh? And then the other thing, and I don't mean any disrespect who has any kind of speech impediment, but when I say this guy stuttered, it was a bad stutter. And it really, I talk about how when your sound quality distracts from what people are saying, I couldn't focus on what he was saying because I was so focused on how he was saying it. Bottom line, and I will bring this back to podcasting, I got my first and ever D and dropped out of college. I was so freaked out. I was like, huh? My life is over. And not that I was a straight A student, but I'd never gotten a D. And I was like, holy cow. And so the program I was in, you can't get Ds. And so I had to take the class again. And to make a long story slightly longer, I had to take it with the same dude. And I was like, oh, you are kidding me. And so it dawned on me, because yes, back then we did have the internet, that I was going to have to find another source to get this knowledge. Now, to bring this back, and I did. I ended up getting, I think, a C in that class because of Victoria, who sat in front of me, who was really distracting in a good kind of way. And so what does this have to do with podcasting, Dave? Well, okay, so the search in many of the apps is not great. And I really think that this is why some people say there's a discovery problem. Can I give you my insights into a discovery problem? I went looking for a podcast. I was like, hey, you know what? I haven't just good old fashioned, let's go find a new podcast to listen to. I couldn't find a podcast that was good. That was the discovery problem. I could find tons of podcasts. I couldn't find any that were good. I was looking for something like on how to grow your business or marketing, and they were all about, ditch the 9-to-5, escape your cubicle, catchphrase, boom, woo, okay, and here's your host, and I'm going to tell, I just wanted somebody just to talk to me. And so I say that to say, if you're thinking of doing a show, there are people who are looking for things that are different than everybody else. And so to finally get to my point, holy cow, was, okay, let's just go with search in apps is not great. Okay, my teacher was not great, or I wasn't great. We were incompatible. So I had to find a new way. So the other way you're going to get found is through Google. There's this other thing that helps people find stuff. Oh yeah, Google. I remember that. And so I started studying SEO. I took Daniel J. Lewis's SEO for Podcasters. I took a class from Yoast, who was the guy behind the SEO. And recently I took a class from my buddy Jurgen over at Polymash. He's got a podcast SEO marketing. And it was actually all of these were really good. And so I wanted to, I started getting into things like Google Analytics because, you can't track, or you can't grow what you don't track. And so I was looking for an easy way to A, get something to help me understand Google Analytics, and B, get Google Analytics on my website. So I signed up for Monster. Well, let me back up a second. I installed Monster Insights on my WordPress site. And this is super easy. And you need to set up a Google Analytics account. And I will have this out at schoolofpodcasting.com/658. It's super easy to do. And then what you do is you tie your Google Analytics account into this plugin. And then when people visit your site, Google Analytics tracks all that information. Monster Insights puts it in English, for lack of a better phrase. I am not using their paid version. Their paid version, basically, they take your left arm, your firstborn. For me, I'm like, no. It's, I thought it was $99 a month. It's $99 a year. All right, I might do that. That's for one site. Okay, I might do that. But there is a free version. And it makes it very easy to see what are the top things that are bringing people to your site. And so I've been using that. Now, the other thing is if you want to get found, you have to find things that your audience is looking for. And in the course from Polymash, Jurgen had a bunch of tools for that. And I'd actually just found one. Have you ever heard of Neil Patel? Neil Patel does Marketing School along with his host, Eric Sue. Love that show. Super duper. And I've heard Neil talk about this free tool he made, but I never heard what the name of it is. It's called Uber Suggest. And if you go to Neil Patel, now Patel is Patel, no T's, no double T's, no double L's. And he's got a cool tool there called Uber Suggest. So I could just go over and let's say I put in something like knitting because I'm a podcaster and we have no creativity. And that's the only thing we can think of when we need a random subject is knitting. And so I can see here that this gets about 33,000 searches, which is kind of high. It's hard to rank in that. It's very hard. And if you pay for it, it's really, really hard. And you're looking at about $1.23 a click. And then I can go over here and say, well, what are some other keyword ideas? It's a free tool. And he shows you kind of, here are some other things to look at. So here's another way. We talked a couple weeks ago about connecting with your audience. This is a free tool that shows you what people are searching for on the internet. And then you can look at this and go, is there something there I should make an episode for? And then you can go in and see, as you do this, if this ranks as some of your top episodes. And you'll actually be able to see if your podcast is on your website. So even if you're using something like Libsyn or whoever, I always have my podcast is on my website. I just embed the Libsyn player. So there are two free tools that you can use. One is called Monster Insights. That's a WordPress plugin to put Google Analytics on your website. And the other one is Ubersuggest. The last tool I want to tell you about is called the Domain Authority Checker. And I realize you're like, Dave, this is like a website class. It kind of is. And what this is there are like 100 different variables that determine how you rank. And you put in your domain name, you hit a button. Now, this particular website is just splattered with advertisements. So put your website in and look for the check authority button. That's the one you're looking for. It's the one seriously sandwiched in between two ads. And I can click this button and you get your domain authority. Now, 100 is like Google. Like that's like bigger than the big. And if you're just starting out, like I just put in a brand new podcast that I put in, I'm at 15, which is not good, but it's only been around a very small bit. And so you can then use this along with Ubersuggest to say, look, let's say let's say I'm a 38 and this keyword is a 36. Okay. In theory, I should be able to rank fairly decently depending on how much competition there is for that word. So when I look into this, I now understand why there are people at companies that do nothing but this. So what I want to do is add this to my recipe. And what I mean by this is now when I say, hey, I'm going to do an episode about blank, I might want to go over and do some keyword research to figure out, okay, what's going to get more traffic, fitness or diet? What's going to get more traffic? Should I talk about, blank or blank? And that might help you then figure out what wording to use in your show notes and in your titles and things like that, that will lead you to more traffic. Because again, what I'm saying here is I'm not giving up on being found in, iTunes and Apple Podcasts and all these other places because that's just a search function, and they might make theirs great in the future. I'm just saying, in the meantime, there's this other search thing called Google, and it might make more sense to rank there as well. What's that one thing, the top thing that makes you go, ugh, and delete a podcast, turn it off, go to the next one? What is your number one? You can only have one. That's what makes this one hard. Top pet peeve in podcasting. As a listener, I need this by the end of the week, basically. I need this by Friday, February 22nd, 2019, because on Monday, February 25th, I will be putting out our episode. I like to do one episode a month. That's basically something where you and I collaborate. And the question of the month is, what is your number one top thing, your pet peeve that people do in a podcast that make you either unsubscribe, delete, or go to the next episode? Would love to hear that. Go over to schoolofpodcasting.com/contact. All my contact information is there. If you want to record something and email it to me, it's dave@schoolofpodcasting.com. Please put February question in the subject line. And speaking of February, on February 28th through March 3rd, I'm going to be in Brooklyn, at the Wythe Hotel at the On Air Fest. I'm not speaking there. I'm just hanging out, networking with people, getting to know people, because the idea, my goal is to make sure that more and more people know that, hey, if you want to start a podcast, Dave Jackson is the guy. So I'm going there to hang out and meet. There's Chad from Radiolab is going to be in, a bunch of other great storytellers, the people from 30 on 30, the ESPN show are going to be there. So I'm looking forward to that. And then come right around the corner after that is Podfest. That is, man, right around the corner. That is March 7th through the 9th. I'll actually be speaking there with Joe Salsihigh from Stacking Benjamins. That is in Orlando. So who doesn't want to go to Orlando if you're like me in Ohio in March? Check that out. Podfestexpo.com and the onairfest.com is the one I'll be at. And then in August, I'll be at Podcast Movement. But I need your absolute number one pet peeve by the 22nd. Thank you so much in advance.
I'm listening to that podcast you told me about.
Podcasts. The droning. Just get to the point, you know?
I think the phrase is, it's time to kill your darlings, or something of that nature. As I get deeper and deeper into what makes really good content, and then what does it take to be found, I've really come to the conclusion that I can't do as many podcasts as I do. Right now, I don't. Half my quote live podcast I don't do on a regular basis. And so it's time to start taking some of these and going, yep, that one's not coming back. That one's not coming back. And really focus on just the few that I have. So I say this because one of the shows I would love to do, but I finally had to look in the mirror and go, you know what, Dave, that one's not coming back. It was an experiment I did to play with a media host. I didn't like the media host, and consequently that show was kind of come to an end. I enjoyed doing it. I kind of thought it probably would take off now more than it did when I started it. And that is the Alexacast at Alexacast.com. And I will be, and I just said the magic word. And I am saying this to you because if you are a big fan of the Amazon world, I guess, and all things woman in the tube, I'm willing to sell you that podcast for pretty much cost. Otherwise, I'm just shutting it down. I'll move it over onto some other free media host that does not rhyme with canker. I'm not moving it there. Although I could and make a penny a download. But if you're interested in taking over a podcast and you're really into the smart speaker world, let me know and I'll be happy to let you take over that show. I think my only stipulation is I'm going to want you to host that on coolerwebsites.com, which is my web hosting. I'm going to put this up in giant air quotes, company. That's really my reseller of GoDaddy, coolerwebsites.com. So if you need any domains or web hosting, it's dirt cheap. It's like $7 a month for WordPress hosting. I try to keep those super low. So if you're interested, let me know. schoolofpodcasting.com/contact.
Hey man, I checked out your podcast, bro. It's dope. You making a living doing that? Yeah. I got a ton of listeners. Advertising dollars are really rolling in. I feel like I'm making a difference.
One more point I want to make today. I had some people that signed up for the 3-month mentoring program. You can find that out at schoolofpodcasting.com/work with me. And somebody signed up, and I know we talk about Patreon here, and we talk about monetization and selling products and things like that. This person signed up to have fun. And I just wanted to remind people that's okay. I used to be in a bowling league for fun. I used to golf once a year with my brother for fun. I ride my bike for fun. And yes, you can actually podcast for fun. And you might say, but Dave, Won't that cost me like $15, $20 a month? Yeah. And you know what? So does golfing. So does bowling. So do, I don't know, whatever your hobbies are. I'm sure they're not free. So I just want to let you know it's okay to podcast for fun. When you see people in the Facebook groups and they're all like, oh, well, you know, CPM, blah, 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 return on investment, yada, yada, yada. You're allowed to just do it for fun and hang out and talk with people who want to talk about the things that you want to talk about and people that you like, and they're cool when you hang out. So yeah, you can podcast for fun. And speaking of cool people, thanks again to John Buchanan for chiming in with his story, and Jeremy and Chris and Christina. Thank you so much. Everything we talked about today, you can find at schoolofpodcasting.com/658. And if you're looking to plan, launch, and grow your podcast, I can help you through courses, coaching, and community. Just go to schoolofpodcasting.com/start. Use the coupon code LISTENER, and I will see you on the inside. Until next week, when we'll be talking about the pet peeves, class is dismissed. Take care, and God bless. It's time to kill your babies. What? No, let's redo that one. Like, when I come up with an idea for a episode now, I might whoop, whop, yeet, woo.